Jake's departure from Silo 7 marked the start of a new chapter, not just for him, but for humanity. As his shuttle disappeared into the vastness of space, Dr. Carter and Lisa stood side by side, watching until the tiny craft was nothing more than a speck against the endless night. They felt a mix of pride and sorrow, knowing they might never see him again. Word of Jake's actions spread quickly across the galaxy. The expose on Genus Labs sent shockwaves through interstellar communities, forcing other corporations to rethink their practices. Governments and alien councils alike took notice, debating how to handle beings like Jake, individuals who possessed powers far beyond ordinary comprehension. Some feared what he represented. Others saw him as proof that humanity could evolve, given the chance. For Jake, life in the stars became a journey of discovery. He traveled to distant planets, ancient ruins, and forgotten civilizations, searching for answers about the Vorith and their legacy. Along the way, he encountered others who had undergone similar trials, though none quite like his own. These encounters taught him that power wasn't meant to be wielded alone. It was meant to unite, to inspire, to protect. On one such planet, Jake found remnants of a Vorith temple buried beneath layers of sand. Inside, glowing symbols lined the walls, pulsing faintly as if alive. When he touched them, visions flooded his mind. Images of the Vorith themselves. They were towering beings made of light and energy, capable of shaping entire galaxies with their thoughts. But they were also wise, understanding the importance of balance. Before vanishing, they had left behind fragments of their knowledge, hoping future generations would use it responsibly. The message was clear: power without purpose leads to ruin. Jake realized then that his role wasn't to dominate or control, it was to guide. He began leaving traces of his presence wherever he went, small acts of kindness that sparked hope in those who saw them. On drought-stricken worlds, he brought water. In war-torn regions, he brokered peace, and when disasters struck, he used his abilities to save lives, always disappearing before anyone could ask questions. Back on Earth, stories of Jake spread like wildfire. Some called him a hero, others dismissed him as a myth. But everyone agreed on one thing: something extraordinary was happening out there among the stars. Humanity looked up at the sky with renewed curiosity, wondering if they too could reach such heights. Before fully leaving human space, Jake recorded a final message. Using technology scavenged during his travels, he broadcast it across all frequencies, ensuring everyone, from Earth to the farthest colonies, would hear it. To those who wonder about my story, he began, his voice calm and steady. Know this: power isn't given, it's earned. It comes with responsibility, not privilege. Use yours wisely, because every choice shapes the future. The transmission ended with a burst of light, a symbol of the energy coursing through him, now shared with the universe. Then silence. Jake vanished after that, stepping into the unknown. No one knew where he went or what he sought next. But his legacy remained. A reminder that even in chaos, there is potential for greatness. For humanity, he became both a beacon of hope and a challenge. To strive for better, to dream bigger, and to remember the delicate balance between strength and humility. As the years passed, tales of Jake Harper grew into legends, told around campfires and whispered in classrooms. His name became synonymous with courage, sacrifice, and the limitless possibilities of the cosmos. And though he never returned, his influence lingered, guiding humanity toward a brighter tomorrow. In the end, Jake chose neither ascension nor rejection. He merged his human heart with cosmic power, becoming something entirely new, a bridge between worlds, a guardian of balance, and a testament to the enduring spirit of exploration. And somewhere, among the stars, Jake smiled, knowing his journey would continue for eternity. In the days that followed, Jake began to understand the extent of his new abilities. The transformation had left him changed, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. He could feel the energy within him, a constant hum beneath his skin, waiting to be used. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. Dr. Carter and Lisa continued to monitor him closely, running tests to ensure his body was stable. But there were no signs of further mutation or instability. Instead, Jake seemed to have reached a kind of equilibrium, a balance between his human self and the power he now carried. The glowing patterns on his skin remained, faint but steady, like a reminder of what he had endured. Jake spent hours practicing how to control his newfound powers. At first, it was clumsy. When he tried to move objects with his mind, they would fly across the room and crash into walls. When he attempted to create bursts of light, the energy would flicker unpredictably. But with time and patience, he grew more precise. He learned to lift items gently, to shape the energy into beams of light, and even to heal small wounds by focusing his power. "It's incredible," Lisa said one evening as she watched Jake mend a cracked piece of equipment with a wave of his hand. "You're not just stronger, you're something entirely new." Jake smiled faintly, though his expression was tinged with sadness. "I don't know if I belong here anymore, or anywhere." Dr. Carter placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You'll find your place, Jake. You've already proven you can handle this. Now it's about deciding how to use it." That decision weighed heavily on Jake. He knew he couldn't return to his old life, not after everything that had happened. Genus Labs would never stop hunting him, and the rest of humanity might fear him. Even among aliens, he doubted he'd truly fit in. Yet, abandoning Earth altogether felt wrong too. He still cared about the people he'd left behind, even if they might not understand him anymore. One night, Zerk, the Kalan ambassador, arrived unexpectedly at the outpost. His presence startled everyone, especially since the location was supposed to be secret. But Zerk wasn't there to cause trouble. Instead, he offered guidance. "You've passed the trial," Zerk said, his voice calm but serious. "The Voreth chose you for a reason. Their legacy is one of creation, not destruction. Use it wisely." Jake frowned. "But why me? Why now?" Zerk hesitated before answering, perhaps because humanity stands at a crossroads. "Your species has great potential, but also great flaws. You may be a bridge they need to guide them forward." The words stayed with Jake long after Zerk departed. He realized the power he wielded wasn't just for himself. It came with responsibility. If used recklessly, it could bring chaos. But if used carefully, it could inspire change. With Dr. Carter and Lisa's help, Jake made plans to confront Genus Labs. Using his abilities, he infiltrated their headquarters aboard Orion's Reach *, exposing their unethical experiments and corrupt leadership. Data files were released to the public, sparking outrage and forcing reforms within the company. Richard Cole was arrested, and the remaining toxins were destroyed to prevent future misuse. When the dust settled, Jake knew it was time to leave. He couldn't stay on Earth, not while questions lingered about who or what he had become. Standing outside the outpost one last time, he looked up at the stars. "Where will you go?" Lisa asked, her voice soft. Jake smiled, though his eyes held a hint of sadness. "Somewhere I can make a difference. Somewhere I can keep learning." As he stepped into the shuttle and launched into space, Jake felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't fully human anymore, but he hadn't abandoned his humanity either. He was something in between. A guardian, a guide, a symbol of hope. And as the stars stretched out before him, Jake knew his journey was only beginning. The final trial came without warning. It was late at night when the air inside the outpost grew heavy, charged with an energy that made the hair on everyone's arms stand on end. Jake felt it first, a sharp pull in his chest, as if an invisible force was tugging at him. The glowing patterns on his skin flared brightly, casting harsh shadows across the room. His breath quickened, and he stumbled to his feet, clutching the edge of a table for support. "Something's happening," he gasped, his voice strained. "I can feel it." Dr. Carter and Lisa rushed to his side, their faces pale with concern. Outside, the icy landscape of Silo 7 shimmered faintly, as though reflecting the energy building within Jake. The ground trembled slightly, and a low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. "It's starting," Lisa whispered, her eyes wide. "The transformation. It's reaching its peak." Jake's body convulsed as waves of power surged through him. Pain shot through every nerve, but it wasn't just physical. It was mental, emotional. The voices in his head roared now, no longer whispers but deafening chants in languages he still couldn't fully understand. Images flashed before his eyes, stars collapsing, galaxies forming, civilizations rising and falling, all connected by threads of light that seemed to pulse with life. "You have to focus," Dr. Carter shouted over the noise, gripping Jake's shoulders. "You're stronger than this. Fight through it." But Jake wasn't sure he could. The energy coursing through him felt overwhelming, like a storm threatening to tear him apart. He clenched his fists, trying to channel the power into something tangible. A burst of light erupted from his hands, shattering a nearby window and sending shards of glass flying. Lisa shielded her face, shouting, "Jake, you need to control it. If you let it consume you, you'll lose yourself completely." Her words cut through the chaos in his mind. Jake closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe deeply despite the agony. He focused on the rhythm of his heartbeat, sensing it with the pulsing glow of his skin. Slowly, the wild energy began to stabilize, forming streams of light that swirled around him like ribbons. Then the visions returned. But this time, they weren't fragmented or chaotic. They were clear, showing him a path forward. He saw himself standing among the stars, surrounded by beings of pure energy. They reached out to him, their forms shifting and merging with his own. In that moment, Jake understood. He had a choice. He could embrace the full power of the Vorith legacy, ascending beyond humanity entirely, or he could reject it, clinging to his mortal roots and risking everything. Opening his eyes, Jake looked at Dr. Carter and Lisa. Their expressions were filled with hope and fear, hope that he would survive, and fear of what he might become. For the first time, Jake realized this wasn't just about him. It was about balance, about finding a way to bridge two worlds instead of choosing one. "I won't give up who I am," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "But I won't run from this either." With a deep breath, Jake raised his hands, letting the energy flow freely but under his control. The light intensified, filling the room until it was almost blinding. Then, as suddenly as it began, the storm subsided. The trembling stopped, and the oppressive energy dissipated. When the light faded, Jake stood unchanged, at least on the surface. His glowing skin dimmed to a soft, steady glow, and his breathing returned to normal. But there was something different about him, something intangible yet undeniable. Dr. Carter broke the silence, his voice trembling. "Did it work? Are you okay?" Jake nodded slowly, a small smile forming on his lips. "I think so. I'm still me, but more." Lisa stepped closer, tears welling up in her eyes. "What happens now?" Jake looked out the broken window at the endless expanse of stars. "Now, I figure out what comes next." Days passed at the hidden outpost on Silo 7, and Jake's condition seemed to stabilize. The nanovat treatment had slowed the chaotic changes within his body, but it hadn't stopped them completely. The glowing patterns on his skin remained, though they now pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. His strength and speed were still far beyond human limits, and the voices in his head continued to whisper, growing clearer with each passing hour. One evening, as Lisa reviewed data from their tests, she noticed something unusual. Embedded within Jake's altered DNA were fragments of text, strange symbols that didn't match any known language. At first, she thought it might be an error in the scanning process, but when she ran the analysis again, the results were the same. "Ellen, look at this," she said, pointing to her screen. Dr. Carter leaned over, his brow furrowing as he studied the symbols. They were intricate, swirling designs that seemed to shift slightly when viewed for too long. "What are they?" he asked, more to himself than to Lisa. Jake, who had been sitting nearby, suddenly spoke up. "They're familiar," he said quietly, his voice tinged with awe. "I've seen them before, in my visions." Lisa turned to him, her eyes wide. "You recognize these symbols?" Jake nodded slowly. "They're part of what I see when the voices get loud. It's like they're trying to tell me something." Determined to uncover their meaning, Lisa began cross-referencing the symbols with ancient texts stored in the Outpost's limited database. After hours of searching, she stumbled upon a match. Fragments of Vorath writing, a language linked to an ancient civilization believed to have vanished thousands of years ago. According to legend, the Vorath had possessed knowledge and power far beyond modern comprehension. "This can't be a coincidence," Lisa murmured, showing the findings to Dr. Carter. The toxin wasn't just a weapon, it was a test, a way to find individuals capable of wielding the Vorath's power. Dr. Carter frowned, rubbing his temples. "If that's true, then Jake isn't just transforming physically, he's being prepared for something greater." As they pieced together the information, Jake experienced another vivid vision. This time, the images were clearer than ever. He saw towering structures made of light, vast landscapes dotted with strange artifacts, and shadowy figures chanting in unison. In the center of it all stood a figure cloaked in energy, radiating power so immense it made Jake feel small and insignificant. When the vision faded, Jake found himself trembling, tears streaming down his face. "It's not just about me," he whispered. "They're testing me, to see if I'm worthy." "Worthy of what?" Lisa asked gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I don't know," Jake admitted, "but I think it's something big, something cosmic." The realization weighed heavily on all of them. If Jake succeeded, he would gain abilities far beyond human understanding. But failure meant complete dissolution, his body turning to pure energy, consumed by forces he couldn't control. Lisa and Dr. Carter worked tirelessly to prepare Jake for whatever lay ahead. They taught him meditation techniques to calm his mind and exercises to help him focus his newfound powers. Slowly, Jake learned to harness his strength and agility, using them with precision rather than chaos. He practiced controlling the energy coursing through his veins, shaping it into forms like glowing orbs or bursts of light. Despite the progress, doubt lingered. Jake often wondered if he was truly ready for what was coming. The whispers in his head grew louder, urging him forward, but also warning him of the dangers ahead. One night, as he stared out at the icy expanse of Tylo 7, Jake felt a surge of determination. Whatever the Vorath had planned for him, he realized, it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about proving humanity's potential, for better or worse. And deep down, Jake knew the final trial was near. The shuttle touched down on Silo 7, landing near the hidden research outpost. The outpost was small and basic, designed for short-term missions rather than long stays. It had a few rooms, some outdated equipment, and little else. But it was isolated, tucked away in a remote canyon far from prying eyes. For Dr. Carter and Lisa, it was the perfect place to focus on helping Jake without distractions or interference. As they unpacked supplies and set up the lab, Jake sat quietly in a corner, staring at his hands. The glowing patterns on his skin were brighter now, almost blinding in the dim light of the outpost. His body felt strange, as if it didn't belong to him anymore. Every movement sent ripples of energy through his muscles, making even simple tasks like standing or walking feel foreign. "Try to rest," Lisa said softly, placing a blanket over his shoulders. "We'll start working on a solution tomorrow." Jake nodded but didn't respond. He was too focused on the voices in his head. They whispered constantly now, louder and clearer than ever before. Sometimes they sounded like warnings. Other times, they felt like encouragement. Jake couldn't tell which was which, and it left him feeling uneasy. The next morning, Dr. Carter and Lisa began their work. Using the limited resources available, they prepared the nanobots, a risky treatment meant to stabilize Jake's mutating cells. The process would take hours, and there was no guarantee it would work. But they had no other options. While they worked, Jake explored the outpost, trying to distract himself. Outside, the icy landscape stretched endlessly, barren and cold. The silence was deafening, broken only by the howling wind. Jake wandered to the edge of the canyon and looked out at the horizon. For a moment, he felt peaceful, as if the vast emptiness around him mirrored the chaos inside. But peace didn't last long. As the day wore on, Jake's symptoms worsened. His emotions swung wildly between calmness and rage. One moment, he'd be laughing at a memory. The next, he'd lash out in frustration, slamming his fists against the walls. Each outburst left cracks in the metal surfaces, a reminder of the power growing within him. Lisa noticed the toll it was taking on him. "Jake, you need to stay calm," she urged during one particularly bad episode. "The more stressed you are, the harder it is for your body to handle the changes." "I'm trying," Jake snapped, his voice trembling. "But it's like I'm fighting two sides of myself. One part wants to give in, and the other wants to fight back." Dr. Carter stepped in, his tone gentle but firm. "You're stronger than this, Jake. We're here to help you, but you have to trust us. And yourself." Jake took a deep breath, forcing himself to settle down. He knew they were right, but it wasn't easy. The visions in his mind were becoming harder to ignore. He saw flashes of alien worlds, towering structures, and shadowy figures reaching out to him. Each image carried a sense of urgency, as if urging him to act quickly. By evening, the nanobot treatment was ready. Dr. Carter and Lisa carefully administered it, watching closely for any reactions. At first, nothing happened. Jake sat still, his glowing skin dimming slightly as the nanobots worked to repair his damaged cells. But then, pain shot through his body like lightning. He clenched his teeth, refusing to cry out as waves of agony washed over him. "It's working," Lisa whispered, checking the monitors. "His cell structure is stabilizing." But the relief was short-lived. As the treatment progressed, Jake's hallucinations intensified. Shadows danced across the walls, forming shapes that seemed alive. Voices echoed in his ears, louder and more insistent. One word repeated over and over: asterisk, chosen asterisk. "What does it mean?" Jake gasped, clutching his head. "Why do they keep calling me that?" Dr. Carter exchanged a worried glance with Lisa. Neither had an answer. All they could do was watch as Jake endured the torment, hoping the treatment would hold. Hours passed, and finally the pain subsided. Jake slumped forward, exhausted but alive. His skin still glowed faintly, but the patterns were less chaotic, more controlled. For the first time in days, he felt a flicker of hope. But deep down, Jake knew the battle wasn't over. The whispers hadn't stopped. They were waiting, watching, testing him. Whatever came next, he realized, would decide not just his fate, but perhaps the fate of something much larger. The situation aboard Orion's Reach grew more tense with each passing day. Jake's condition worsened, and the crew's fear of him escalated. Whispers of mutiny began to spread as some demanded stricter measures to contain him. Even Dr. Carter and Lisa felt the pressure mounting, knowing they were running out of options. During one particularly heated meeting, Richard Cole, a senior executive from Genus Labs, made his move. Tall and stern, with sharp features that matched his cold personality, Cole had been observing Jake's transformation from a distance. To him, Jake wasn't just a man. He was a potential asset, a living experiment worth billions. And Cole wasn't about to let such an opportunity slip away. "We need access to his DNA," Cole declared during the meeting, slamming his fist on the table for emphasis. "Whatever is happening to him could revolutionize our research. Imagine the applications." Dr. Carter shook his head firmly. "You're talking about exploiting a human being. This isn't just science. It's his life we're dealing with." Cole sneered. "Don't be naive, Alan. You think this is about ethics. We have shareholders to answer to. If you won't cooperate, I'll find someone who will." Lisa stepped in, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Jake is unstable right now. Pushing him too far could make things worse, for everyone." But Cole wasn't convinced. He left the meeting with a grim expression, already plotting his next steps. Later that evening, he sent a message to headquarters, requesting authorization to take over the project and remove Dr. Carter if necessary. When Alan and Lisa learned of Cole's plans, panic set in. They knew what would happen if Genus Labs got their hands on Jake. He'd be dissected, studied, and likely destroyed in the process. There was only one choice. They had to get him off the station. That night, under the cover of darkness, Alan and Lisa smuggled Jake out of the medical bay. They avoided security cameras and used maintenance tunnels to reach a small shuttle docked at the edge of Orion's Reach *. The plan was risky, but they didn't have time to come up with anything better. "Where are we going?" Jake asked weakly as they helped him into the shuttle. His glowing skin pulsed faintly, and his movements were sluggish, though his eyes still burned with determination. "To Philo 7, Lisa replied, strapping him into a seat. "There's a hidden research outpost there. It's isolated, so no one will find us. We can figure out how to help you without interference." As the shuttle detached from the station and drifted into space, Jake looked back at Orion's Reach *, now just a distant speck against the stars. For the first time in days, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could survive this after all. Back on the station, chaos erupted when Jake's escape was discovered. Cole stormed into the lab, furious. "How could you let him get away? Do you realize what this means for Genus Labs?" Dr. Carter stood his ground, his voice calm but firm. "It means you won't turn him into a weapon. Whatever happens to Jake now, it's out of your hands." Cole's face reddened with anger, but there was nothing he could do. Jake was gone, and chasing him down would draw too much attention. Instead, he ordered increased surveillance on all outgoing transmissions, hoping to track the fugitives. Meanwhile, Zerk watched the drama unfold with quiet detachment. When approached by Cole for assistance, the Kalan ambassador refused, citing neutrality. But privately, Zerk wondered if Jake might succeed where others had failed. The whispers of the Vorath were not easily ignored, and Zerk sensed that something monumental was approaching. On the shuttle, Jake closed his eyes, trying to block out the constant hum of voices in his head. The visions were growing clearer, strange symbols, vast landscapes, and towering beings wreathed in light. He didn't understand what they meant, but he felt certain of one thing. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. And yet, despite the fear gnawing at him, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Jake's transformation continued to spiral out of control. The glowing patterns on his skin grew brighter, spreading across his arms, chest, and even his face. They pulsed faintly, as if alive, and cast an eerie light in the darkness of his quarters. He tried covering them with clothes or bandages, but nothing could hide the unnatural glow. It was as if his body no longer belonged to him. His emotions became unpredictable too. One moment, he'd feel calm and focused. The next, anger would surge through him without warning. Simple frustrations turned into explosive outbursts. During a meeting with Dr. Carter and Lisa, Jake slammed his fist on the table so hard it cracked under the pressure. Both scientists jumped back, startled. "Jake, please try to stay calm," Lisa said gently, her voice trembling. "We're here to help you." "I'm trying." Jake snapped, his hands shaking. "But it's like I can't control it anymore. My head feels full of static, like voices whispering things I don't understand." Dr. Carter exchanged a worried glance with Lisa. They had run countless tests, but none provided clear answers. Jake's DNA was mutating at an alarming rate, forming structures they'd never seen before. Whatever Viperus was doing to him, It wasn't just physical, it was affecting his mind as well. That night, Jake experienced something truly terrifying. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the whispers he'd mentioned earlier grew louder. At first, they were faint murmurs, indistinct and muffled. But soon, they formed words in languages he didn't recognize. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting and shifting into shapes that seemed almost human. Jake bolted upright, his heart pounding. "What do you want from me?" he shouted at the empty room. The shadows didn't respond, but the whispers grew more urgent, almost pleading. Terrified, Jake rushed to the lab, waking Dr. Carter and Lisa in the middle of the night. He begged them to find a way to stop whatever was happening to him. Lisa suggested using nanobots, tiny machines designed to repair damaged cells, to stabilize his mutating biology. It was risky, but they had no other options. "We'll need time to prepare the treatment," Dr. Carter said, already working at his computer. "But we'll do everything we can." As word of Jake's worsening condition spread, tensions aboard Orion's reached a boiling point. Some crew members demanded he be quarantined, fearing he might become dangerous. Others argued that isolating him would only make things worse. Debates turned into shouting matches, dividing the station further. Zerk, the Kalan ambassador, watched the chaos unfold with quiet interest. He approached Lisa later that day, asking for updates on Jake's progress. When she hesitated, Zerk leaned closer, lowering his voice. "This is bigger than any of you realize," he said. "The toxin wasn't meant to harm. It was a test, a trial created by an ancient race known as the Voreth. Those who survive gain unimaginable power. But not everyone survives." Lisa stared at him, her mind racing. "What happens to those who fail?" "They dissolve," Zerk replied bluntly. "Their bodies turn to energy, consumed by the very force they couldn't master." The weight of his words hit Lisa like a punch to the gut. She relayed the information to Dr. Carter, who looked pale and shaken. Both knew they were running out of time. If Jake couldn't stabilize soon, he might not survive the final stage of his transformation. For Jake, every hour felt like an eternity. The hallucinations grew worse, the whispers louder. He began seeing visions of distant stars, alien worlds, and towering figures cloaked in light. Sometimes he thought he heard his own name being called, not by anyone on the station, but by something far away, something ancient. Despite the fear gnawing at him, Jake also felt a strange pull, a sense of purpose he couldn't explain. It was as if the toxin, or whatever it had awakened within him, was guiding him towards something greater. But whether that something would save him or destroy him remained unclear. Time was running out, and Jake's fate hung precariously in the balance. A week had passed since Jake drank the viperous toxin, and life aboard Orion's reach seemed to return to normal. The initial panic had faded, replaced by a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Most people assumed Jake's survival meant the toxin wasn't as dangerous as the scientists claimed. Even Dr. Carter and Lisa Monroe began to doubt their earlier findings, though they kept monitoring Jake closely. But then, strange things started happening. It began with small, almost unnoticeable changes. One morning, Jake noticed faint glowing patterns on his skin. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the light, or maybe a side effect of being tired. But when the patterns didn't fade, he grew worried. He tried covering them up with clothing, but the glow persisted, shimmering faintly even through fabric. Then came the speed. Jake had always been quick on his feet, but now he felt like he could move faster than ever. During a casual game of handball with some crew members, he shocked everyone, including himself, by catching the ball midair without effort. His reflexes were sharper, more precise, as if his body knew what was coming before it happened. At first, Jake found these changes exciting. He joked about becoming some kind of superhero, laughing off concerns from those around him. But deep down, he couldn't ignore the unease growing inside him. Something wasn't right. One evening, while walking through the station's corridors, Jake accidentally punched a metal wall during an argument with another crew member. The impact left a dent, and his knuckles barely felt a thing. The other man stared at him, wide-eyed, before backing away nervously. What are you?" the man stammered. Jake didn't have an answer. For the first time, fear crept into his mind. He hurried back to his quarters, avoiding eye contact with anyone he passed. That night, he sat alone in the dim light, staring at his hands. They looked normal enough, but he could feel power coursing through them. Power he didn't understand and couldn't control. The next day, Jake sought out Dr. Carter and Lisa. He showed them the glowing patterns on his arms and explained what had been happening. Lisa examined him carefully, her expression growing more troubled with each test she ran. "There's something wrong with your cells," she said finally, looking at the data on her tablet. "They're changing, evolving. It's like the toxin is rewriting your DNA." Dr. Carter frowned, rubbing his temples. "This wasn't supposed to happen. We need to figure out how to stop it before it gets worse." Jake's bravado crumbled under their worried gazes. "Stop it? How do you stop something like this? Am I going to die?" Lisa hesitated, glancing at Dr. Carter. "We don't know yet, but we'll do everything we can to help you." As word of Jake's condition spread, whispers filled the station. Some crew members avoided him, afraid of what he might become. Others watched him with fascination, wondering if his transformation would lead to something extraordinary or something monstrous. Zerk, the Kalan ambassador, took a particular interest in Jake's situation. He requested private access to the medical data, claiming his species had encountered similar phenomena in the past. When Lisa asked why, Zerk gave a cryptic response. "These toxins are not natural," he said. "They were created long ago by an ancient civilization. If your friend survives, he may gain abilities beyond your understanding. But survival is not guaranteed." His words sent chills down Lisa's spine. She relayed the information to Dr. Carter, who grew even more determined to find a solution. Meanwhile, Jake struggled to cope with the changes overwhelming his body and his mind. Every day brought new symptoms, new fears, and new questions. Was he still human, or was he becoming something else entirely? Jake Harper wasn't the kind of person to back down from a challenge, especially one he had made in front of an audience. The next day, his drunken declaration was the talk of the station. Some thought it was hilarious, others were alarmed. But Jake didn't care. He saw it as an opportunity to make a name for himself. Late that night, when most of the station's crew was asleep, Jake sneaked into the restricted lab where the Viperous samples were stored. Security was tight, but Jake had spent enough time on Orion's Reach to know its weak spots. Using a stolen keycard and a few tricks he picked up over the years, he bypassed the locks and slipped inside. The lab was cold and eerily quiet, lit only by the faint glow of monitors. Rows of vials lined the shelves, each containing strange substances collected from across the galaxy. Jake scanned the labels until he found what he was looking for, Viperous Sample A. He grabbed the small glass container, held it up to the light, and smirked. "This is going to be fun," he muttered under his breath. Without hesitation, Jake unscrewed the cap and tipped the contents into his mouth. The liquid tasted bitter, almost metallic, but it didn't burn or sting like he expected. For a moment, nothing happened. Jake laughed softly, feeling triumphant. He imagined the look on everyone's faces when they realized he was fine. Better than fine, actually. But then, doubt crept in. What if the toxin was slow-acting? What if he had just signed his own death warrant? Jake shook off the thought. He wasn't about to let fear ruin his big moment. Instead, he turned on his camera recorder, capturing himself smirking at the lens. "See that?" he said, holding up the empty vial. "Still alive. Guess your lethal toxin isn't so lethal after all." He uploaded the video to the station's network before leaving the lab, making sure everyone would see it by morning. Then he went to bed, confident that he'd proven his point. The next day, Chaos erupted aboard Orion's Reach. Security footage showed Jake breaking into the lab and drinking the toxin. News spread like wildfire, sparking debates among the crew. Some called him brave, others called him stupid. Dr. Carter and Lisa Monroe were furious, rushing to examine Jake as soon as they heard the news. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Dr. Carter demanded, glaring at Jake. "This isn't some game. That substance could still kill you." Jake shrugged, leaning back in his chair. "Well, Doc, I'm still here. No pain, no problem." Lisa scanned him with medical equipment, searching for any sign of damage. To her astonishment, Jake appeared perfectly healthy. His heart rate, blood pressure, and brain activity were all normal. There was no trace of toxins in his system. "It doesn't make sense," Lisa murmured, frowning at the results. "If Viperus entered his bloodstream, there should be something." Dr. Carter crossed his arms, clearly frustrated. "We need to monitor him closely. Just because he seems fine now doesn't mean he will be later." Meanwhile, Zerk, the Kalan ambassador, watched the situation unfold with growing interest. He hadn't believed the humans' claims about Viperus, but Jake's survival intrigued him. After the initial shock wore off, Zerk approached Dr. Carter and Lisa. "Your toxin may not be as harmless as this human suggests," Zerk said, his tone serious. "In my experience, such substances often have delayed effects. Be cautious." His words unsettled Lisa, but Jake brushed them off. "Relax, everyone," he said with a grin. "I feel great. Better than ever, actually." And for a while, it seemed true. Days passed, and Jake showed no signs of illness or discomfort. In fact, he became more energetic, even boasting about how he'd outsmarted the scientists. The crew began to split into two camps, those who admired Jake's bravery and those who feared what might happen next. Unbeknownst to anyone, however, subtle changes were already taking place within Jake's body, changes that would soon reveal the true nature of Viperus and the danger Jake had unleashed. In the far future, humans had spread across the galaxy, settling on distant planets and moons. Among these new frontiers was a small icy moon called Silo 7. It wasn't much to look at, just a barren landscape of frozen plains and jagged mountains. But beneath its surface lay secrets that would change everything. A team of scientists from Earth's most powerful research company, Genus Labs, had been sent to explore Silo 7. They were led by Dr. Alan Carter, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. His assistant, Lisa Monroe, was younger but just as curious. Together, they worked tirelessly in their lab aboard the orbital station Orion's Reach, which hovered above the moon like a watchful eye. It all started when one of the researchers stumbled upon something strange during a routine excavation. Deep inside a cavern, they found an organism unlike anything seen before. The creature looked almost plant-like, with glowing veins running through its translucent body. But what really caught their attention was the liquid it secreted, a thick, greenish substance that seemed to pulse with energy. Back in the lab, the team carefully studied the mysterious fluid. They named it Viperus because of how dangerous it appeared under the microscope. Early tests showed that even a tiny drop could dissolve organic material instantly. When exposed to lab animals, the toxin acted fast, shutting down vital organs within seconds. The results were terrifying and fascinating. "This stuff is incredible," Lisa said one evening as she reviewed the data. She glanced up at Dr. Carter, who stood nearby, staring at the vial of Viperus. "If we can understand how it works, imagine the possibilities." Dr. Carter nodded slowly, though his expression remained serious. "Possibilities, yes, but also risks. Something this powerful could easily be misused." Word of their discovery quickly reached other parts of the station. Diplomats and traders from various alien species often visited Orion's Reach to discuss alliances and trade agreements. When news of Viperus spread, many were skeptical. One such doubter was Zerk, an ambassador from the Kalan species. Tall and slender, with shimmering blue skin, Zerk had little patience for human exaggerations. At a formal meeting, Zerk openly mocked the claims about Viperus. "You humans always think you found something extraordinary," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But most of the time, it turns out to be nothing special." His words sparked laughter among some of the attendees, but Jake Harper, a brash journalist covering the event, took offense. Jake was known for his bold personality and love of attention. That night, fueled by alcohol and pride, he made a reckless declaration. "I'll drink it," Jake slurred, pointing at the screen displaying images of Viperus. "Right now. Prove me wrong." The room fell silent. Some laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Even Zerk raised an eyebrow, intrigued by Jake's audacity. "You wouldn't dare," someone finally said. Jake grinned. "Watch me." Though everyone assumed he was bluffing, Jake's challenge lingered in the air. Little did they know, his reckless words would set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. For now, life aboard Orion's Reach continued as usual, but the seeds of chaos had already been planted.